Welcome everyone. This is our fourth class in Life is Our Teacher, Nuts and Bolts of Spirituality. And this one is about the love story of the human and divine. So hopefully that opens our hearts a little bit already, just thinking about that. And I have a quote from actually our own book. We said, "We can never fulfill our desires as long as we are in a state of separation." That means in duality. And so we're thinking about those things that we go after and try to accomplish or try to have, and we might get those things, but then there'll be something else beyond that, or something else, or something happens to this and then we have to get it again, or we just get another desire, and there's one after the other. This is happening because we're living in duality and identifying as separate from other things. So it's always out there, those things that we want. So we're going to speak more about a condition that is not duality, and think about how that would be. I thought I'd begin with a poem, my poem, created for this, that speaks of that human-divine relationship and of the love aspect of that. It's called Meant to Be. As a human, all alone, life's storms I sail, till my heart's elixir is distilled, which tips the scale. That was chapter 1. Here's chapter 2. God, I see you now, but you seem to be here today, gone tonight, until I learned some tricks to hold your sweet light. Now you shine upon me as a tree. Now you are a lizard smiling at me. Now chapter 3. You permeate me. We're the whole cosmos. But as a comet as well, I circle you, first far, then close. All is part of me in the orbital dance. But there's a chapter 4. I find a way to relate to you. You say my uniqueness makes all things new. With you dancing with me, I don't know how, but nothing's outside our orbit now. It's meant to be. You need it one more time? Let's do it. As a human, all alone, life's storms I sail, till my heart's elixir is distilled, which tips the scale. Here's a transformation right here. So we're into chapter 2 now. God, I see you now, but you seem to be here today, gone tonight, until I learn some tricks to hold your sweet light. Those could be practices, for example. Now you shine upon me as a tree. Now you are a lizard smiling at me. Chapter 3. You permeate me. You're the whole cosmos. But as a comet as well, I circle you, first far, then close, all part of me in the orbital dance. Now there's a kind of union of all of it. Chapter 4. I find a way to relate to you. You say my uniqueness makes all things new. With you dancing with me, I don't know how, but nothing's outside our orbit now. It's meant to be. So you may have picked up on that there are different types of love. And also spoke about it in the chapter. Ibn Arabi, who is a Sufi mystic from about 1,000 years ago. It's great that we can communicate with him now and find out what he was thinking way back then. That there's different kinds. One is natural love, he calls it. And that's the kind of love between a mother and a child, between someone and something they need. That's a kind of love, you could call it. It's a love of need mostly, and fulfillment of needs. That's natural love, he called that. Then there's spiritual love. It's becoming harmonized with the divine and transforming according to the divine plan. We find this in many religions right now, of finding out what is it that God wants and let us follow that. And there's a great beauty in that. But there's even more in the other kind of love. So the third love is divine love. In this experience, you experience the divine through the qualities, and beyond that was the idea of God yearning for a co-creator. Through our uniqueness, each one of us, there's something introduced that surprises God. And just imagine that experience of being able to surprise God with something new. You can't say that God never thought of it, but bringing it into fulfillment and bringing others into the joy of that fulfillment, that's the one that we're looking at in terms of the human-divine combination. We'll be talking much more about that. Would you like to go on?
So, we've learned from both science and mysticism that everything is interconnected with everything else. Physicists would say everything is entangled with everything else. Everything is affecting everything else. So that's kind of the status quo. However, we can make a difference in what it is that we contribute to that interconnectedness. So we can take a look at what we could think of as our capacity for what we're able to express. So on the most basic level, we're in a dualistic state of consciousness. I can pick something up, I can set it down, I can look at each of you, we can talk back and forth, and there certainly is an effect of that, but there's a much deeper effect in what is possible when we're in a state of what we've called relational unity, when we are experiencing a kind of a harmonic relationship that's permeable. So we're not separated, but we still have our distinct sense of identity. So we can look at this. Diane talked about different orders of love, and I was thinking, well, there's different orders of knowing too. There's the knowing of what's called acquired knowledge, and we all have the things that we've learned in school, we've learned from books, we've learned from teachers. And then there's what's called revealed knowledge, and this is knowledge that comes from within. It doesn't come from an external source. So that's a higher order of knowing. So we can increase our capacity to have that kind of knowledge come to ourselves. And the same thing with love. There's love that's very real, but it's in a dualistic state. We feel separated from the object of our love. And that can be very beautiful in so many ways. But there's, you could think of it as almost like octaves or harmonics of love. Love that takes place when we're in that state of relational unity, when things seem very magical. There's the love that we experience for however we think of as the divine being, or what even Arby calls our personal Lord or our personal angel. And there's also the love that we experience for any other manifestation of the divine in existence. So this is the way that we have the cross connections, and what the Sufis would say is the horizontal dimension. And we're trying to awaken that capacity. So the theme of this class is the love story of the human divine. So that love story is enacted in many different dimensions, many different directions, and many different degrees of capability of being able to experience it. So I'll use kind of an analogy. If someone doesn't know much about wine, and they're just trying some wine, and they go, well, this is sweet, this is kind of fruity, but they really don't have much in the way of describing it. But then you have a sommelier sampling of wine. And now they might have 50 adjectives to describe what they're experiencing because they've been opened up to an awareness of many more dimensions than just the surface, superficial ones. So we work with the divine qualities. We work with them in our practices. But we can increase our capacity both to experience those qualities, but also our capacity to participate in the transformation of those qualities by the way we relate to something. So if we're relating to something through beauty and we're in a deeper state of connection, we see past the surface appearance of what we're experiencing, then that beauty is much richer than if we just go, well, look at that pretty flower over there. And I know we've all had experiences like this. We have experiences like this listening to music that transforms us, looking at art, seeing something beautiful in nature. Diane and I go for walks just about every morning, and there's always beautiful sounds of birds. Maybe we see a child just skipping happily. But we're transformed in that moment of connection past our usual state of being. So we've talked in the past about presence, how important presence is. But just like there's different orders and degrees of love and knowing, there's different degrees and orders of presence. There's one kind of presence, which is someone is just taking roll and being present to the big truck out there, but trying to pay attention here at the same time. You're just physically there, but that's about it. Maybe your mind's off someplace else, so your body is present. Well, that's not a lot of a degree of presence. But then there's the degree of presence when you're really fully there, you're really engaged with someone. And that's many degrees deeper than the other one. But even beyond that, we could think about a presence that's not just receptive, which presence needs to be, but it also can be creative. It can be transformative. There's a way of being present, and it doesn't mean you have to say a word that opens up things. And we'll be talking more in this class about something we've gotten to before, about everything being a portal to the sacred. What happens in connecting with that portal, what it is that we bring through that portal, and how we participate in the new creation that takes place. So it's my hope that in these classes that you maybe are having a feeling of like we're weaving a tapestry of understanding. And what are the threads? The threads are some basic ideas that we keep coming back to. We come back to the barzakh, the meeting place. We come back to tawil, harmonic perception. We come back to the idea of relational unity. We come back to presence. But now we're trying to, if you started a weaving, or if you were watching someone making a weaving on a loom, in the early stage you'd have no idea what it was going to look like. Maybe it's just all red threads. Now they put a different color in. And now they put something else in there, but gradually a pattern starts to unfold. And that's what happens with our understanding of deeper ideas. At least that's our hope of what happens. And it isn't just a matter of understanding something. We've talked before about revelation is not a discovery of something that's been there, it's a discovery of something that's never been. But with that idea, what's incorporated with that is that revelation couldn't take place except by the uniqueness of our being in relationship to what we are experiencing that actually draws forth the revelation. So this is, to me, a much richer idea of a way of experiencing.
So let's continue with this topic of presence. Being present to something. Well, if we remember Bekenstein's bound, and I will just explain what we really need here, is the idea that if you're having a conversation with someone that's on in another area, and let's say that you're seeing them on a screen, the larger the screen, probably the bit more pixels and everything, however you can see them, then that's how much more you can have communication. It improves the communication wider or bigger that it is. Well, that's in the kind of technological ideas, but as far as actual consciousness, the wider that and larger our consciousness is, then the more the divine can communicate. That makes a lot of sense too, doesn't it? Because if we're a person who just, like he was saying before, somebody shows up, but that's about it, and they're thinking about something else, there's not much communication, and there's not much learned, let's say, about God. If we're talking about God, there's not much that's communicated. However, if that is widened, well, how do we widen that? Well, pretty much all of us that are on spiritual paths, what we do is we learn more about those inner realms. And when we do that, then we are widening, you can imagine that, our presence, widening the screen on which we can receive. It's widening and in giving God a better mirror. It's probably polished up nicely too, and there's no cloudy places in it. Now there's a beautiful reflection of the divine, not only the divine's own face, but what we add to creation is communicated then. So what are those realms? Just to be basic right now about talking what they are, there's the realm, and this is, of course, there's many ways of looking at a color wheel and pointing at the colors and saying what colors there are. Well, same thing with the realms. You could say, this is one realm, and someone else would say, no, there's 3 realms included in that realm. So as I'll speak any kind of language you want to on that, Eskimo, or we could talk about Native Americans, or let's talk Sufis right now, one I'm familiar with. So one of them is the realm of the jinn, they call it, Jinn. A lot of people think, what in the world is that? But jinn really means, genius is the root word of jinn, or the jinn is the root word of genius. And it has to do with discovery, innovation, intelligence, aha. And there's a lot of the surprise that comes to God is from the jinn realm. Also dreams and imagination, that is all from jinn realm. And we all have that within us. Some of us use it much more than others do. But this is one of the ways, especially using imagination, and all the different ways that we use imagination. That will include all of us. The more that we can unfold that part of us, and I'm going to give you some practices in just a few minutes too, to work with this, then the more that the divine has a playground, the divine has joy, the divine has newness, the breath of newness, the freshness of the eyes, as we've talked before. So that's the realm of the jinn. Then the realm of the angel, well, that one we're quite familiar with in our churches, the idea of singing alleluias. Think of the choir, the beautiful choir we have here at All Saints. And the singing and the facing God straight on and being able to glorify and be joyful. This is the role of the angels. And it's such a restful and wonderful place, especially when we have our human tasks, and they can be so difficult, and we can turn for a moment to this beautiful angelic realm and share energy with that realm. So imagine now we have the realm of genius, we have the realm of and angels. You can think of light also as being from the realm of angels. And the qualities is the next realm. So some of you have meditated on different qualities. If you meditate on peace, that's already meditating on one of the qualities, but there's many different, at least 100, probably 200 if we really found more. And it's just like opening this fresh fruit, this fresh, someone you've never met before, looking at this baby you've never seen. All the experiences like that are like what the qualities bring to us. It's a place that we've never been before, or experiencing differently. And then the last one is, well, one of the top one really is the realm of mystery. So what are you going to say about that? Nothing. We can't really speak about the mystery, but it is that place that we go to in transforming from one condition to another. It's that openness to say, okay, I'm going to let go of this, even though I don't know what's next. So all of these are parts that unfold and give us a much wider scope and wider screen on which to be in love with the divine. So that's why we have practices like that. And maybe that'll give you some impetus for what we do and understanding a reason for what we're doing.
So the Sufis say that creation began because God was a hidden treasure, desiring to know and be known, to love and be loved. And I would say with the longing for love as yet unknown and untasted, God created each soul with a longing for the possibilities of what would arise, with each soul enabling new overtones and harmonics of the ways of expressing and experiencing love. So imagine a longing for love, and just starts off as kind of just this generic longing, but now a longing for tasting of all the different ways in which love can be expressed and experienced. And each of us is a living embodiment of that, both with everything we encounter in existence, but also with the divine being. So we've talked before about the idea of everything being Gabriel. Everything is seeking to reveal its unique divinity to everything else. So look around the room here. All of you are Gabriel. Nancy, you are Gabriel. Phyllis, you are Gabriel. And everyone here is a Gabriel that's got a longing to reveal something of the uniqueness of the way divinity can only come through you and all of the universe to everything else. And similarly, as you look around, realize that everyone that you encounter is seeking to reveal that to you. Okay, that's just people. We don't have to stop with just people. Imagine you're looking at the sky. I was driving here, the beautiful clouds. Imagine that the sky, which certainly changes its forms, but the sky has a longing to reveal the way divinity comes through it. The water, the bay, the birds, the insects, the rocks, everything is a manifestation of the divine being. And when we can engage in this way of connecting that we call tawil, or harmonic relationship, then we can experience that. Okay, so that's one side of the coin. And an idea that came to me this week, preparing for this class, is that of Sophia. And I think of Sophia as the being that drew forth the desire from the divine being for there to be a creation in the first place. So you might think, well, why did what we think of as God decided to, well, I'm going to make a creation? Well, I think that this Sophia, or in the Old Testament, it's wisdom, is the name given to the same being, was there all along the way, and it drew forth this desire from the divine being. So I call this the eliciting light of Sophia. So each of us is Gabriel, longing to reveal that which can only come through us, but each of us is also potentially, as Sophia, that which elicits from whatever we're in relationship with a desire for them or that to express their divinity. So it's like a calling to Gabriel. Okay, Gabriel, show me what you got. Come out. I want to experience. And another way of thinking about this is all part of the love story of the human divine. All of these ways of expressing, experiencing, receptive, creative are different ways of loving. So we could think of all of existence is the ongoing fulfillment of this desire for the divine to love in infinite numbers of ways. So just hold that thought for a second. And think how different the world would seem if you could experience that, even a little portion of your day, that underneath the surface of things, which might be awful, terrible, there's a desire perhaps not yet awakened. And the Sufis say every desire begins with a divine impulse, and maybe it gets very distorted all along the way. But what goes with this is every deep desire of your being is God's desire. That is the desire of the divine being that can only be satisfied through you. So we have such a precious gift that we can return to what we think of as the divine. We have such a precious gift that we can offer to each other. We have such a precious gift that we can allow ourselves to receive from each other. So qualities have so many different names and properties, but imagine all of them, what's the bottom, just like scientists, physicists are trying to discover, is there some bottom line fundamental thing in the subatomic particles? Well, imagine that the essence of everything, which the mystics say, is love. And everything is an expression in a different way of the ways that love can be and the ways that love can become.
I'd like to just dwell on that for a minute. That love behind everything. You know, we spoke earlier about the that you can't find the answers or find what are what we desire in the separated state. I mean, we'll be accomplishing some things, but they'll be very temporary. But this deep level that he's speaking on, where everything is love, this calls to that multidimensional existence. I'm especially, just feeling all the love from everything that there is, and that pull. There's pulls that we have in life that are assumptions and old patterns and that kind of thing that kind of bop us from one place to another, that kind of pull. But then there's the kind that he's speaking of here, and it's just this great desire and yearning. This yearning. The Sufis speak of, the idea from Rumi is that a flute is a reed that was cut from its reed bed. And ever since then it has been wailing this yearning song. So they make the flute out of that. And that's why you hear the sound of the flute is, oh, oh, this sighing and this multidimensional kind of experience of all things being with each other. This the oneness that we are aching for so much in back of everything that there is, and that we can hold. There's so much place there for holding everything else. I'm looking at Phyllis right now holding herself, and I'm thinking of this lovely holding this basket or something of all of us. And that's a quality that's in all of us. In fact, the Sophia idea came up again when we were walking and planning for this class. And I was feeling it as, when you think of Don, you often think of intellect and the way that he's able to, conceptualize all these things and work them together, remember them. It's just phenomenal to me. But I see in back of that is the part of him who is Sophia, the feminine, that is what is inside of him and is so much love. You wouldn't believe when we have arguments or things like that, and it ends up he's just oozing all this love. And if, it breaks me down at a certain point that I have to say, okay, let's, I understand, let's find a way. You had nothing intentional about what you were saying, and it's just this sound, almost this cooing of a dove or something like that. And I feel that Sophia within Don Azerbaij so beautifully. So in our lives, just as a quick aside, we've had times when we were told directly to live our lives of Shiva and Shakti. We were married in the yogic tradition before the Sufis. A long time we've been in this business. But that's a beautiful idea of the energies of the world, that we were to be those energies of the world, and we were told that's what you need to be doing. Then we were given the names of Radha and Krishna, who you might be familiar with in the Hindu situation and condition, where they're wonderful dancers. You often see them dancing in joy in life. And before that, I looked at him one day and I saw Krishna. He just looked exactly like Krishna to me. So this is part of the allegory of our soul, of our particular allegory. You have your stories, and you have ways that you see the world, and how it's softened to you in some ways. It's how it's reflective to you also. That you see somebody and you go, my gosh, they've been doing something that I've been doing all this time. Jennifer just told me about somebody that she found that was all about feminine archetypes. And I'm going, oh my goodness, this is something Jennifer and I have discussions for 20-some years probably about that. So finding someone that you go, oh my gosh, they're just like my sweetheart. Just allowing these experiences to occur. I have more, don't I? So we're timing because we want each one to have a good amount of time. And I'm enjoying that. So I have something more to share with you. It is a practice from like about 1,000 years ago called Munajat, Munajat. You can find out more about this in the book Alone with the Alone by Henry Corbin, based on the teachings of Ibn Arabi. Here's this fellow that we seem to like a lot from about 1,000 years ago. Munajat. And it is a practice it's called intimate dialogue. That's really the definition of what Munajat is. So you're having a discussion, an intimate discussion. Hopefully, if you have a teacher, or a good friend, then you have intimate dialogues with them. In this case, you're going to have an intimate dialogue with the divine, with God. So it's set up in a certain situation. There are 3 different steps. The first is to, let's see. Okay, we're summoning our active imagination. Okay, so here's an opportunity for us. Some people say imagination is just fantasy or kind of going off the rails and thinking of all these things. But we think of imagination as kind of a way to reinstate the way that things really are. Taking it from not so great and not so wonderful to a resonant, amazing place. And sometimes it's setting things up so that they can work with each other that way. So what are we going to set up in this case? We're going to imagine that we are sitting facing God. Right in front of us, here is God. And you can imagine God in any way that you'd like to. And the second is to feel God in your heart. So that not only are you using almost like your dream imaginations, kind of your jinn self, to see something in your imagination, your mind, but you're also feeling within your heart the divine. And you could be hearing the divine too, as you have your heart open to the divine. And also the feeling of, so you're seeing, you're feeling, all your senses are open to the Divine One. This is this experience of Munajat. Why don't we take a few minutes to experience, and we'll continue the meditation with Don. So you're giving yourself to this experience. You're seeing God as you are familiar with God. Trying to sense, as you do when you're with a friend, you try to sense them inside, not just looking at them, right? And now even feeling God within your heart. And now you're attending, in case there's any message or sense, something unfolds between you, something is shared. And why don't you now entertain any feelings you have, how God is feeling about you, either in actual words or in feelings. Now take a moment to say something in your heart to God. Now when you do this at home, take some more time for the surprise part. Things that you didn't think about in this relationship. Enjoy.
So continuing, here's a seed thought for you. What we long for is who we are. And I talked a while ago about everything being Gabriel, everything being Sophia. And when the light emitted by Gabriel combines with the light received by Sophia, a new variety of light results, enabling possibilities in the new creation that were never possible before. And we could say a mystical interpretation of love thy neighbor as thyself is to open to what is created in the divine co-presence in the way that we relate to whatever it is that we are experiencing. Tawil, relational unity, this deeper connectedness, enables a circulation of light that is the driving force of the new creation. So once again, instead of just passively participating in the expression of divinity in life, which is very wonderful, of course it is, even more wonderful is to be able to offer something to that, to contribute to that. And we contribute to that not just as an individual unique being, but in our way of connection with whatever we're experiencing. That relationship now contributes something that could never come from either part separately. So two people in this state of connectedness, the Sufis say a third presence arises, now there's a light that is, you could say, synthesized from this connectedness that is different, and it's not just the sum of the light of the first person plus the light of the second person. It's a new order of light that enables new possibilities. So oftentimes in the scriptures, the description of existence is, the direction is, then it's all moving back to where it came from. It's back to the source, it's the return. But instead, this is a forward thrust of existence that we contribute to. So now I want to come back to this notion that everything is a portal to the sacred. We've talked about this many times in the past. We've talked about when we're in particularly a difficult situation that our initial reaction is to close off, withdraw, get into a negative state, perhaps. But when we realize that the way that we relate to this situation is our golden opportunity to open something up, to bring something forth that could only happen because of the situation itself and our way of relating to it, that now transforms everything. We bring about a transformation, there's a breakthrough, there's a different order of beingness that now is possible. So each of us is a being of light. We are made of different forms of light, different vibrations of light, and we could say different combinations of divine light. Just like a beautiful painting, you could say, well, it's made out of the colors of these different tubes of paint you could see next to the artist's palette, but what results on the canvas, you could never know or predict from just looking at the separate tubes. It's something much, much more than that. What can come from our unique blend, so to speak, of light, and the way that we relate to other manifestations of light, now is enabling something that's never been before. This new creation that takes place at every instant, we actually can become that which seeds what's possible to blossom in that new creation. The way that we go about seeking the fulfillment of the deepest desire of our heart is actually exactly what is needed to bring this blossoming forth, to enable it to take place. So back to the idea of everything being a portal. Think about the unique configuration of light that is your being, and it's certainly not static. It's changing, it's dynamic, it's evolving. And it's changed by our consciousness, by our imagination, by our intention, by our degree of capacity, as I talked about earlier in this class. This determines the quality and the nature, the bandwidth, so to speak, of the light that can come through that portal to the sacred. And this opens up a transformed world. Now we can live in a world that is filled with this, you could say, upgraded light of beingness, of everything in it, and the ways of connection of the light of everything in this transformed world with every other expression of light. An ocean, a symphony of light. It's not just expressed in physical manifestation, but this same transformation takes place in the subtle realms that Diane was talking about a while ago, the realm of the jinn, the angelic realm. Pure light, we talk about the realm of pure spirit. the realm of splendor. All of the overtones of light, this dance of light, and the return of this transformed light to the source of existence, to the divine being. On every out-breath, and on every in-breath that we take, then we can be open to receiving the light of the Gabriel of everything in existence on all levels. We can also be Sophia, we can be that which elicits a further expression of this light, that draws down the desire for this furtherance of light even to the divine being. And then when we exhale, all that's returned, all that's been changed, all that's been transformed, so take a little time now and just feel, not think, but just feel, experience this symphony of light that each of us is an instrument in. But unlike an instrument in a physical symphony orchestra, what comes from our instrument comes forth from everywhere. Because we are interconnected with everything on every level. And what we receive is not coming from these separated instruments on the stage, but it's received from everything, everywhere. Everything co-present with everything else. So feel yourself just bathing in and emanating this light that is continually evolving and transforming and becoming more and more beautiful. And experience the underlying love that is at the basis of all of existence, every level of existence. The love for the divine being with every level of manifestation, love for everything and every level of manifestation for the one being. And the cross connections, the love for every expression of the divine towards and from every other expression of the divine. And awakening is our process of becoming more and more capable of loving. And more capable of receiving love. So we close with the Sufi invocation. Toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the messenger, the spirit of guidance.